Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks, and you are checking out a Serum tip and trick tutorial video on ADSR. So in this video, we are going to be recreating the theme song from Stranger Things with one instance of Serum. So if you're not into the show or that type of music, that 80s inspired sound, you will learn some really cool tips and tricks in this video. Namely, we're going to create a sequence and an ARP at the same time. So one oscillator is going to be the bass line and one's going to be the kind of the top line, the melody. So you'll get to see how you can use two LFOs being utilized as steppers to pull that off. So let's just get started. All right, so I have an initialized patch in Serum. Now first thing I'm going to do is let's turn off oscillator A and turn on oscillator B, and I'm going to choose a wavetable I made called ESW Moog 02. This is a wavetable I made from a sample from a mini Moog. I'm going to use this because it sounds more analog, obviously. I mean, it's coming from a Moog, but it just has that Stranger Things vibe, much more so than the default saw in Serum. Now, if you don't know, the Stranger Things, a lot of the Stranger Things music is pretty much created on analog hardware synths from the 80s. Maybe some 90s, I'm not sure, but they're older synths. So listen to this saw versus this one. Right, it's less buzzy, less digital, less in your face, which means I don't have to filter out as many of the frequencies. And as we move through our wavetable position a little bit, it just has an imperfect sound, which kind of imparts that analog flavor to it. So let's give it some voices of unison. I'm going to detune this to about 0.03. Oh, also, if you want to download this wavetable, link is in the description. And let's turn the blend down just a little ways. So now we have this. All right, so I'm going to go to my envelope. I'm going to add a little bit of attack time so I don't get any pops or clicks. And for the decay, let's turn the decay up a little bit to about 1.3. This doesn't need to be exact. And we'll turn the release up to about 30, 35. All right, so that is the sound in our oscillator. Now I'm going to go to LFO4 and I'm going to apply a little bit of modulation to my wavetable position. We're going to take the amplitude of that envelope or that LFO down to a pretty low amount. We're going to uncheck BPM and we're going to turn this down to under 1 hertz because this is just going to move through our wavetable position in a very subtle way, giving us more of an analog flavor. All right, so time to get to the stepper part. If you don't know what a stepper is, it's a common term that you'll run across in certain synths that don't have an arpeggiator, where you can use a stepper or an LFO, in this instance an LFO as a stepper, to modulate the pitch of your target source. In this instance, it'll be oscillator B. So with a synth like Silent or Thorn, they have an arpeggiator, right? But with Massive and Serum, there's no ARP. So you have to use in Serum the LFO as a stepper, and then in Massive, they have actual, you can change the mode from an LFO to a stepper. Well, that's what we're going to be doing. So we need to take the certain points within our LFO shape here and turn it into a step. To do that, you're going to hold down Shift and then click a node, and you'll notice that as you do that, it straightens that node out, and then you can move it up and down. So there's two things we need to be aware of. Obviously, we need to be aware of how many semitones or how many notes we need to be able to move up and down in our progression for, right? And then also how long we want it to be. So you can actually change your grid values in Serum by clicking. Of course, you can arrow up, right, to change the value, but we need more vertical grid lines and horizontal. So the vertical grid lines will represent our changes in pitch, right? And I want to go up at least a whole octave. So having it set to 8 would be kind of hard to do that, because if I hold down Shift and we go right here, this line right here that I'm currently at, this center line, this will be the exact same pitch that I'm playing, right? So if once we modulate our coarse pitch and I hold a C2, if I have this first step right here, that'll play a C2. But I need to go up an octave, right? So I'll show you this real quick. We're going to modulate our coarse pitch. It's going to do it at default of positive 19. Leave it there. So check this out. Let's just try to work up a C scale. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt or Option on my keyboard. And you'll notice that as I move my mouse up and grab a point, it snaps it to a grid line, right? So if I just snap certain points to a grid line, I'm going to be missing certain intervals or certain steps in my scale, right? So if we just snap it and I play this, let's turn the rate down to about, let's do 2 bars. We'll do trigger. Right? That's not a scale. So if I wanted to try to find my scale, I'm going to hold down Shift on my keyboard and move this, and I can't Alt-Shift-click to snap it, right? So now I'm just kind of guessing, well, where's that next step? So there it is. And then I'd have to do that same thing here. Be like, okay, let's try this. Okay, that's right, right? And so that becomes a shit show. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into here. We're going to double click and do 16, 24, hit enter. So now we have a lot more grid lines, right? And that's great because it'll be easier to find our pitch, and it'll actually shorten our notes because we set this to a 24 note, or 16 and 24. So now we have more steps to work with as well, right? So I'm gonna hold down Shift and click, and you'll notice that made a shorter one. So we're gonna keep this right at the first step. And I'm gonna hold down Alt and Shift, so you'll notice that steps. So now if we wanna create a C scale, it's really easy. I'm just gonna do this and work my way up. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you guys will get the idea. So if I hold my C2 note, we do trigger, right? It's really easy to find your scale. Now, if you change this coarse pitch value, this is going to be different. Right? Let's say we go up to 36. That's a divisible by 12. Right? It's doing more jumps. So leave it at 19. It'll make more sense for what we're going to be doing in this video. All right, so let's actually start to create this melody. Well, I've already kind of touched on, we want the first note to be the same note that we're playing. The second note is an E. So we need to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 points, or 4 snaps from that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we should have, right now we need to go up to the G, which will be 7 from our first point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we should have C, E, G. Right? I'm holding down just one note right now. You can see this. And now if I play it manually, right, that's what we want. So now we're going to go, and we're going to go up to that B, which is going to be, I believe, 1 down from the very top. Right? And then this note right here, this note is going to go up to that C. All right, so now we have our ascension going up the scale. Right, now we need to work down. So the notes go, it's going to go from that C back down to that B, and then it's going to drop back down to this note. So you just kind of have to mirror your shape as you work down, right? So we have, so let's take this up. So off camera, I finished drawing in the points by holding down Alt and Shift, and this is what we have. So now we need to have it actually play back more rhythmically. And to do that, we're going to add another LFO and modulate our filter, cutoff of our filter, to kind of have it be acting almost as a performer. So I like to think of this as how Massive called it. They had a stepper and a performer. And on most patches where you're using a stepper, you're going to use a performer to kind of tell it how to control. Think of it like this. Let's say Serum actually had a dedicated arpeggiator. You're going to draw on your steps, you know, your actual notes in your arpeggiator. So it's changing the note, the pitch, right? And then you're going to choose your value at how those notes play back, quarter note, eighth note, 16th note, etc. Now, that's usually tied to the global output of the synth. So we need to do something similar with an LFO. Right now, everything's just kind of blurred together. We want more of a da-da-da-da-da. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to LFO 2. We're going to create a shape that looks a little something like this. Doesn't have to be exactly like this, just anything really. I want it kind of tailing off a little bit at the end. And we're going to set this to an eighth note value. We're going to hit trigger. So it re-triggers every time I repress the key. And we're going to apply this to the cutoff of our filter. And we want this to be unidirectional. So I hit Alt and Shift, click on that. So it's just going in one direction. And let's set this down now to about 30 Hertz. Let's route oscillator B into our filter. And now we have that is what we have. So I could change this to a fourth note, a quarter note, but then we need to change this to 4 bars to be kind of a quarter note playback. I'm at 170 beats per minute, so if you guys are at different BPM, this will sound different. Make sure you do set your session to 170. You can see that up here. All right, so there's what we have. So our oscillator B is pretty much done. Let's just add a little bit of fine tuning to it, and that will make a difference once we have oscillator A in there with it. And the reason I'm doing that is analog synths from the early 80s, they didn't have super saws. They didn't have, a lot of voices of unison. You would just detune different oscillators against itself to create that wider sound. So once we get oscillator A in there, that'll make more sense. Let's pop over to the global tab real quick. And I'm going to apply a stack to our unison. I don't know if you guys ever mess with these, but they're kind of cool. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click through these and we're going to add, you can hear as I do this, it goes up in pitch, right? I'm going to add 12 and then 2x. So it's adding 2x, it's adding an octave to our oscillator. So back to global and I'll take this down. Hear that? So that's all that's doing, and we're going to leave it on linear. So let's go back to oscillator. Now let's get in oscillator A, and we're going to get in our sequence for that. So our bass line. So we're going to be using LFO3 to control the pitch and a progression of our bass line. I'm going to load in another custom wavetable. I'm going to load in one that's called Juno 01, I believe. It could be Juno 2. Let's see. No, it's Juno 1. And I'm doing this just because it's another cool analog-inspired wavetable. So I'm going to leave my wavetable position right at 1. We're going to add 5 voices of unison. We're going to detune this, turn down the detune quite low, about 0.2, 0.3, just like the other oscillator. Turn the blend down, and we're going to fine tune this guy in a negative direction. Let's do negative 10, and let's tune the whole thing down an octave. It's a bass, right? All right, so let's turn on our filter. So that's what we got, because remember LFO2 is still modulating our filter and we're routing oscillator A into it. So now we just need to go to LFO3 and we need to create our bass line. So we're going to keep the same grid value, and I already have the notes kind of worked out in my head as I made this, but we want to do something like if we're playing this, and then I want to go up to D. And I think I want to go down to that A. So that's essentially what we want happening while we do one key press, right? So I'm just trying to create a whole sequence. So what we're going to do is modulate the coarse pitch of oscillator A. We're going to leave it at a value of 19, just like we did with the first one. And I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift and click 4 steps here. So now we have... right, and we need to change our duration. Right now it is way too quick. So we want this to be 8 bars because this is going to be a whole progression. And let's hit trigger. So every time we hit a key, this will re-trigger. And now I'm going to go up to that D note on this one right here. So that was wrong. That should just all be the same. And then we're going to go up 2 steps, 1, 2 to hit that D. All right, so that's what we're doing. And then we're going to now go up 2 more steps from that D. So 1, 2. We want, I believe it's the so we're gonna get another step of that in here. And another one all the way to this line right here. And then from there we're gonna go down. I think it's 3 from our center line. 1, 2, 3. It's right there. Now let's try this. Perfect. So let's just keep that going for essentially this bar. So this is 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bars, right? That's why we set this to an 8-bar grid. It's allowing us to essentially have 4 bars. And then on this last one, we're just going to go down to an octave. Like so, which is down at the very bottom. So this is 12 steps away from our center line. And that is the melody plus the bass giving us our sequence. So I'm going to apply a macro to our filter here so I can control this a little bit better when I want, and we'll call this cutoff. All right, now I'm going to add in a custom noise sample, but I just wanted like a nice ambient, creepy type of, pad or drone essentially. So let's key track, turn the pitch up to 12. And we want this routed into our filter as well. So it's just going to sound like that. Let's turn the level up on that a little bit. Let's change this to mono. We don't need more voices. All right, now it's time for the effects, and that'll pretty much round out the sound. So the first thing, let's add a little bit of EQ, take out a little bit of the lows here. Turn the Q factor down. Let's add a little bit of highs. And now I'm going to add coarse. Coursing effect is kind of a nice creepy effect for when you're going for analog style sounds, especially Stranger Things vibes. So let's turn the rate down. I don't have it checked on BPM, but I think it's just a shade under, or turn it up rather, under 20 hertz. Let's get the feed a little bit higher. Right, that's just making it sound creepy. Listen to the difference. Right, so it thickens it up a little bit. Now we're gonna add hyper and dimension. We're gonna use both effects. So let's turn the rate down to about 10, the detune down to about 8 or around 10 rather. I guess the rate could be a little bit faster. Let's turn the mix down to, I think it's around, I think I had the original around 20, 25%. Not sure, but let's just use your ears. Turn the size down, the dimension, and the mix up a little. All right, and then let's add some reverb. So reverb here, let's drag it up because I'm OCD like that. I'm gonna have it on the hall setting. Let's turn the size down just a little bit. The size, this is all to taste, obviously. We'll keep it around 30 actually. Let's turn the decay up. Let's turn the low cut up. And then let's use the spin effect. The spin, if we crank this up, it's gonna be crazy. But it's kind of creepy sounding. Again, Stranger Things sounds eerie to me, creepy, so let's keep the spin just a shade under halfway. Let's keep the spin depth right around halfway, and let's turn the mix down just a pinch. All right, so let's turn the modulation depth down on the cutoff to about 50, 48, 50. All right, there it is. And that is pretty much the sound. So if you have any questions or comments, post them below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget that you can download some of the resources from this patch in the description. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm Echo Soundworks. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.